Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of NPC Contact, the podcast dedicated to everything and anything old school RuneScape. I'm your host, Will, and as usual, we are joined by my lovely co-hosts, Grant. Grant, say hello.
Hi.
And Dane.
Hello.
Well, I was rudely interrupted, but actually, you have a point. This week, I'm not going to be doing the hosting.
It's me. I got him to do the intro because I've practiced it about 9 times now and I can't seem to get it down. But welcome to the podcast.
Even I fucked up in the bloopers.
Yeah. So
yeah, I'm just going to throw everything over to Grant. From now on, is your podcast. What are we doing today?
So we're briefly going to be going over the Gazette for August, going over everything in that, and then I'm going to pose a question to you guys like we normally do.
Sure thing.
But so I'm looking at the blog now. We have Leagues 2, Fishing Boss, the roadmap obviously that's been covered in there, but we'll get to that in just a second. The combat achievements, Soul Wars, A Kingdom Divided, the clan system, and of course Will's beautiful group Iron Man. And yeah, so we're just gonna kind of be discussing where they're at with those projects, as well as where they're gonna be coming sort of next year. Because let's be honest, a lot of them originally planned for this year aren't going to be happening due to, of course, world circumstances. But
and this is the Gazette for August 2020, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
So I'm just looking at it now. So the first thing they've covered is Leagues 2, the second installment of Leagues. That would be
Trailblazers. Yeah.
To be completely honest with this, I am not. I mean, I've never been a guy for Leagues, but I mean, it's worth covering for sure. They've covered some rewards they want to do. Which I think we could have voted on them the other day. So we look at those. That's a stream. Never mind. Don't do that. But basically, they've covered off the graceful. There's a I believe there's a animation for the teleport. There's a house kit, and basically similar stuff to that of the Twisted Leagues. Basically just cosmetic rewards that you'll get after finishing the league. Which honestly, I genuinely quite like. I think they're quite cool. There's one of them though, I think, if you guys will find it, it's the I think I've got a link. It's the animation that they provided for what was it, the home teleport, which I immediately thought it immediately looks like something you could just get out of Solomon's General Store. Yeah. But it is cool. I mean,
it does look pretty cool. I think in terms of the theming, I think it looks really cool. Everything seems to be based on
matches,
that,
right?
the like brown yellow sort of desert theme, which I think is pretty cool. I'm not really sure why it is desert themed because it's based in Misthalin, right?
Well, that's what I was going to get at. Yeah, it's like mainland,
area.
Right? So there's nothing to do with the desert, but they've kind of gone with this kind of like eastern.
Yeah,
it kind of vibe.
Seems a bit questionable,
but they look cool though. I mean, what do you think, Dane, about it? I don't know if you've seen them, but
I've not actually seen them, so
I'll
no idea what you're talking about here.
As we kind of talk on, I'll give you a link to one of the things.
But... Yeah, so while you guys do that, I'll just say my thoughts on the stuff. I think graceful recoloring is a very good direction to go in general when it comes to old school RuneScape cosmetics, because everybody runs around the game in graceful, right? Everybody has a set of it, so it's something that can apply to every player.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of people talking about the idea of having like a fashionscape sort of ammo slot thing where you can store cosmetics and like wear another outfit because everyone's bored of the fact that everyone's running around in graceful. I've never been too much of a fan of that because it kind of reminds me of the dragon keys
system,
in RS3, and I feel like while that's fine for skilling, as soon as you do anything where combat is involved, unless there's like some sort of effect that as soon as you enter combat it like removes all of the
well they kind of do that in RS3, right? Like when you jump into the wilderness or like any sort of clan wars, it takes off your keepsakes. But no, honestly, any sort of cosmetic things I'm not the biggest fan of. The new league that's going to be coming out, I haven't done too much research into it, but from what I understand, it does look quite interesting. Definitely different to that.
So the interesting like gimmick to this one, obviously the Twisted League was locked to Zaya. This one, you start off in Misthalin, which is, like I mentioned earlier, like the Falador, Varrock sort of region. And you have access to be able to unlock different parts of the map. But you can only unlock, I believe it's 3 of them. So, and out of a choice of like maybe 10 regions or whatever it is. So you have to pick which areas you want to unlock in order to like gain more points. Which I think is quite an interesting concept, because you're going to see a lot of people that are picking different regions, and there isn't going to be like a clear and obvious.
Well, I think the
know.
idea of the regions picking is the exact same thing. I mean, I think they're still in this one, but I think when Twisted League came out, everyone took different approaches of what the buff things. I can't
Yeah, the
remember what they were
relics.
called. Yeah, so everyone took different relics. You know, some people were doing the one that gave you stamina and blah blah blah. So I think that's going to be very similar. I mean, although I think relics are still in this league, it's still going to be
Yeah,
very
they
different
are.
depending on where you go. Like
It's-
relics, I think. Because Zaya was always the same, right? Like everyone
Yeah,
had
that's
the same
the
map,
issue.
so the relics you picked were kind of like became very meta because it was the same area. Well, I think specific relics might be better to specific areas. So
Yeah.
I mean, there's always that. So we'll have to find out. But
Off the top of my head, I don't know what the regions are that you can unlock, right?
no, I
But
just know it's the entirety of Mistalin. But I think there was also like there was a part that wasn't in Mistalin, but they were including. I can't remember. But we'll
so
kind of
I
touch
just
on
think the only thing that like slightly concerns me about leagues, and it'll be interesting to see which way this goes on the new one, is that when it gets sort of figured out, it becomes very like copy and paste. Do you know what I mean? So like for Twisted
Yeah, no, I
League,
agree.
as soon as everyone realized that the endurance relic was by
Yeah,
far and
meta,
away
it
like
was
the
the one
best,
everyone
yeah,
picked, right? Yeah.
it just became everybody playing that way. And I think
Which is
that,
why I like this one though, is because I
yeah,
think it changes the way you play a bit.
I mean, obviously, if you're playing leagues in order to get as many points as you can to buy all of the rewards and blah blah blah, then you're going to want to pick the most optimal, way of doing it. But I don't know. I think these are really interesting because it gives you the variety that you don't see in the regular game.
I think leagues, because obviously before we had leagues, right? The only real, I don't want to call it esports, but the only real competitive tournaments we had were Deadman mode. So I think leagues are one of those, like, it's a genuinely really unique idea and I like it a lot. And I think instead of just going, oh yeah, now you can go here, like with this one, I said they're allowing you to go to different regions. And
Yeah.
I'm just kind of scrolling through rewards right here. And actually, they're all really cool. Like, I don't have an issue with really any of them. The only one I'm a bit meh about is the teleport. Because it does, it's sick, but it does look very, like...
Solomon's Thor. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, for sure.
When you
But,
think
I
about the
mean,
alternate teleport in old school where it's the cow kicking you,
yeah,
that's like
true.
retarded.
I mean, that came
but...
from RuneFest, like 2014. But yeah, no one's really cared about that. So, I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't pass.
yeah.
I'm also looking at the Relic Hunter outfit. I don't know if that does anything. I believe it's purely cosmetic, similar to that of the one that came with Twisted Leagues.
Yeah, it is.
Dane, did you know much about the previous league, the Twisted League, or did you not really pay attention to it?
I don't really. I've never ever PK'd, so I feel like this is two
It's not
different
PKing.
conversations though. So, in terms of like leagues too, like this new one that they've put on the Gazette, any attention to anything that will bring attention to this sort of that sort of. I don't know what I'm fucking saying in English.
Sorry.
It's a hard language.
Anything new that will bring attention to
Just the game
that,
in general.
just that in general, I think
Yeah.
is good. And reading, even though it won't personally affect me because I won't do it. I think I'll definitely watch it because I think
Oh, definitely.
at the start it'd be quite exciting to see how people learn like certain metas,
Yeah.
or just if
And just
even if
content
people
in
just play
general,
it, yeah,
right?
if even if it's just played for fun and then
Mhm.
because it just isn't great, and then but then in terms of like the rewards for it, I'm all for like the dragon keepsakes, to be quite honest, but I think it needs to be done differently if it is
Yeah,
to
right. If there's gonna be
brought into
any
old school.
sort of cosmetic stuff, like I'm sorry, I draw the line at fairy like wings and particle. It's just no. But I mean, if someone wants to change the way their dragon axe looks, because that's one of the rewards. It's a skilling tool ornament kit. I don't really mind that at all. As long as it's stays in line with where the game is. Obviously, we're focusing a lot on leagues right now. But I think with this one, I think I'm gonna give it a shot. I don't know about Will, but the only reason I want to give it a shot is because I didn't play Twisted Leagues, and when the rewards came out, I remember being quite like, I wish I had those. So I'm gonna give it a shot.
I think I'm the same
so,
way.
yeah.
I didn't touch Twisted Leagues because at the time I can't remember what I was doing. I don't think I was playing RS too much at the time actually. But this one has definitely grabbed my attention more. I think that might just be because I'm more interested in. To be honest, when the initial league came out, Twisted Leagues, I just thought it was a bit of a gimmick that I just wasn't interested in doing.
Well, I was the
because
same, yeah.
it's sort of along the lines of King of the Skill. I know a lot of people really enjoyed that content, but it just wasn't for me. And I thought that it would be like another thing that they do for a week or something, just to get everybody, interested in Zaya, and then it would just be dropped. But if it's actually
sure.
going to be like a consistent piece of content that they want to put out, sort of like Dead Man, like Dane said, I'm not a PKer. Dane isn't a PKer, but I think that these sort of seasonal game modes are actually very good for the longevity of the game, because it gives you something new to look forward to every year
as well.
Yeah.
It makes people watch it on Twitch. It brings everyone together to watch something that they either do themselves as well or they don't do, but it still makes people watch it. So, and that's always going to be good for the game itself.
So what we'll do there is kind of cut that off, because we could talk about leagues all day and kind of the impact they have. But I did want to talk about the roadmap briefly and what they've already offered. So recently we got the Mahogany Homes. I believe we covered that briefly in the last podcast. Just speaking about it and if we liked it, and we all kind of agreed that it was quite a good update. And with the most recent thing that's meant to be coming out, of course, is actually the most recent thing that came out today, as a time of recording. We have the new quest. I don't know if it's Porcine or Porcine, but the new Slayer quest. I did it when it came out. I quite liked it. It was really quick. I thought it kind of, introduced the new player to Slayer. It was cool.
Okay, so I haven't touched this quest. If you want to quickly mention the quest, I haven't done it. I don't think Dane's done it either.
I have not.
In terms of, I'm assuming it's along the lines of, what's the wolf whistle in RS3, where you got summoning.
Yeah, it's very similar. It's like it's the druidic ritual for that of Slayer,
right.
Basically.
It's like basic concepts, and then
I'm assuming no one really cares about spoilers. The premise of the quest is really simple. You hunt down a little animal thing that's been terrorizing some lady in Falador, and she's like, and then you get beat up by it, and you're like, why did I get beat up by it? It's because you didn't have your special goggles that you have to wear, because remember, Slayer, you have to wear certain things. So you kind of learn about that. You learn about different creatures needing different things, such as wall beasts and spiny helmets and all that kind of stuff. And for this one, there's a new item that came into the game, the new goggles that you put on the Slayer helmet, and that protects you against the new, I believe they're called Sour Hogs, the new Slayer creature. But yeah, it was a good little quest. I thought I didn't have a problem with it. But what I was going to cover there is the next big thing that I believe is coming out is the fishing boss. Now, we did cover a lot of the fishing boss in the last podcast.
Yep.
But, I guess we could just kind of briefly go over it again quickly. But that, I believe, is meant to be coming out mid-October. I'm looking at this image right now, and that's meant to be coming out in the sort of middle of October. So what, again, briefly going over, what are your thoughts on it? And
yeah, so if you guys want a more comprehensive overview of this, then go and listen to episode 1. But we'll just very quickly go over it now. For me, I think it's very good to introduce newer players towards bossing. I don't like that it's called a boss. I would rather it be called like a PVM or a skilling encounter or something along the lines of Wintertodt and Volcano, because I don't think they really fit bosses that well. But I think it's definitely good to be exposed to the mechanics, even if you are a skiller or whatnot.
And I think kind of all three of us had that premise, really.
Yeah.
It was like, we don't mind it being a thing, but it's not really a boss. It's kind of its own little thing. But yeah, I mean, Dane, do you have anything to
go on then.
Yeah, just going over the XP rates. As long as it doesn't make everything else completely irrelevant, then I don't think anyone's going to be moaning too much.
So after the fishing skilling boss, we have the Halloween event, which is, it's the Halloween event. They always kind of do little fun things, but they're never really important. And after that, I believe, is the one that if I believe what it is, it's the combat.
I think so,
achievement.
yeah.
I think that is the PVM sort of diary thing, correct?
That's what I get when I look at that.
That looks like it's going to be coming either sort of mid-November to the start of December, which is good actually, because I originally thought that was going to be 2021.
Yeah.
But as we see by this picture, which I'm sure Will will show you,
it'll be up on the screen right now.
You'll see that all of the bigger updates have been pushed to 20, which we all expected, right? We all expect them to be pushed further because we can't control what's going on right now, and it's only fair. But yeah. So looking into 2021, we have Soul Wars, which I am not going to cover too much on because it's just like, I don't know.
That's a topic in of itself, I think, that we can do later in the year.
But to kind of keep it brief, I think the main two ones in 2021 that everyone's going to be talking about is Clan System and the Group Iron Man, which in this image has been put to late 2021. But I was recently watching the Q&A with Kieran, and he kind of spoke about how this is very rough, right? You know, it says it's late 2021. That could change. It could be early. It could be in the middle. They don't really know at this
If you
point, but
look-
we do know it's next year.
Sorry, if you do look at the top, it says the dates, and the 2021 dates only go to June. So
Oh, there you go then.
it
Sorry,
looks
my
like it's
mistake.
aiming for like a summer release, which would obviously make sense because
It's
a big
biggest update of
update
the
at
year.
summer is, you know,
Yeah.
when everyone's on the summer holidays and stuff. So, yeah, I know that they were obviously aiming to release that early in the year / end of this year, but obviously with
Yeah.
COVID, everything, they've had a bit of a reshuffle. I think Mike D was talking about, which is why we're getting the PVM achievements earlier rather than later, because they were supposed to come out at the start of
Next year
2021.
as well, yeah.
Yeah.
So looking at that, you know, obviously we have, again, you guys will be able to see this. You know, you have the sort of orange updates like Mahogany Homes. There, I'm assuming they're sort of classes, sort of medium-sized updates.
Yeah.
We have Soul Wars and Clans and Group Iron Man, which are large. But then if you look in the middle, we have these little mini updates, which I think, in sort of retrospect, is quite a good idea. That instead of having, you know, like big, or sort of medium, you know, we're having a medium update, then we get a little one, medium, and then we get large. I think the way they're doing this is quite smart, especially, of course, with what's going on. So we have like the 20th and 8th birthdays for RS and Old School, and then 2 other mini updates Easter, and then 2 other mini updates after. So I mean, overall, I'm quite excited for all this. I mean, there's also the Karen overhaul in there as well, which we'll kind of touch on briefly. But overall, I'm quite excited for all the new releases.
What do you reckon, Dane?
I just think I can understand still why they do the weekly updates, but I just feel like,
It's a lot
I don't
of
think they're all
Pressure.
necessary.
are they going to be necessary moving forward if they want to stick to what is going to be appreciated almost within the community over the next, say, year or so with the current situation that we're going to be in? Like, is it even going to
Sure.
be practical, you know, like for that to be being done over the next
Yeah.
year or so?
And it sort of comes back to the topic we were talking about last week when we mentioned that the fishing boss, well, actually, when we were looking at the Gazette, I think it was quite a while ago, actually, and we were talking about how Winter Todd classifies as a medium sort of sized update.
Yeah.
So
we were talking about the sizes of updates.
Yeah,
and
it's very interesting to sort of see how they're dividing this up, because I would personally find it very interesting to see what they think a mini update is, because
they haven't specified.
Yeah,
Right?
I think
We
that's
have
why
things like
it's hard for us
Halloween.
to even to give our
comment,
opinion on it, because
yeah.
we don't know how they give certain
Perceive it,
updates
yeah.
that sort of criteria. So if you ask me about like the new, was it the combat achievements? That is what
Yeah.
you said.
Yeah,
That to me would be quite a big update, but it depends
classifying
obviously
it as medium.
what
so
it, what
it's
it
like-
includes. Yeah, of course. So, which I'd personally look forward to, but then again, how big of an update is it actually going to be?
I mean, you look at what they've got written in this roadmap, and you see the costume, how the costume room rework is classified as mini, but so is the Porcine of Interest. Now,
Which is a huge
one of
quest,
those is
right?
like a 5-minute quest that introduces you to Slayer, and the other one is like a huge rework of the player and house system.
Exactly.
So it's like, until we see more of what they say a mini update is, it's going to be really difficult to try and, you know,
Sure.
guess any sort of consistency there, because we haven't seen enough of it. I think that the more we go along, you know, we'll actually have a clearer idea of, you know, is 2 mini updates a month too much? Is it too little? Do like bug fixes count in mini updates, or is it literally new content? Because I look at this and I see that is a lot of new content. I say new in, you know, air quotes, because, you know, Soul Wars is something that is being lifted from another game, and obviously we have the Karen overhaul. We already have Karen in the game, so it's not really new, but obviously we're getting the new quest with that. What's the new quest called? I can't remember.
Kingdom Divided.
Yeah, that one. It's also quite interesting that we see another medium-sized update at June 2021. So it's just medium. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that as well.
I mean, we don't
I've
know.
actually got the roadmap in front of me. Does it not say anything about Raids 3 or anything in there?
No.
No, but I think we're all assuming that would be a large update. It's also interesting that there are no more large updates for the rest of this year. we are in September, so we have 4 months left
Yeah.
in the year.
I mean, what was, I believe,
Sorry, not 4,
January we
3
had
months.
Nightmare, and that was really the only big update. No, and then the new quest came with it. So, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
when,
so
when you look
kinda
at this
cutting it off
year,
there,
it's
though.
yeah. Sorry, go on.
I was gonna go over just lastly in the Gazette, and then we'll kind of move on. Is they speak about Prime Gaming and Old School, right? And Prime Gaming being, for those who are unaware, Twitch Prime. That's owned by Amazon. Essentially, you can get it for free if you have Amazon Prime, and it allows you to kind of give rewards on Twitch and stuff. It's quite cool. So what Old School plan on doing is partnering up again with Prime, because we did that last year with the year prior with the purple skin and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they want to do it again. And I think honestly, I've always been on board with it. They kind of talk about possibly having a sort of like Prime Gaming LMS tournament, which I think is cool.
Mhm.
You know, if you have Prime, you can join. And I believe, is it Mod Mike? Yeah, Mod Mike D. I was watching the Q&A, and he was kind of talking about like the potential for Old School and partnerships and all that kind of stuff, and how we don't really want to change the sort of core elements
Yeah.
of the game, i.e. the progression. And I think Prime in itself is like a perfect thing. But also he kind of went on a bit of a tangent, but he kind of spoke about how what if it were like a coffee company, or something that's just it's not going to affect the core. You're not going to have coffee cups in game that have brands on them, but it's like
Yeah.
yeah. So
That's a brilliant idea, by the way.
So
Well, I mean,
basically, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just pick it up from here.
For sure.
So there has always been an issue when it comes to partnerships or sponsorships, whatever you want to call them, with gaming. You look at, I know that you guys aren't particularly interested, but in the professional League of Legends scene at the moment, in Korea, the big Korean league is sponsored by McDonald's, specifically the McDelivery. And for those guys at home who are familiar with games like League or Dota, they've got these little flags up all across the map that have the McDonald's symbol on it, and it says McDelivery in the game. And it's just really jarring to see. So I love the fact that Mike D is trying to come up with some sort of way to make it more subtle and actually have some sort of experience tied to it, not like in-game experience, but like the Last Man Standing tournament.
Well, that's what he spoke about. He spoke about how for other games, it's very easy for them just to kind of whack a hat in game with a logo on it, like World of Warcraft or something. And there you go, bish bash bosh. But for him, he really spoke about how he really wants to keep the integrity of the game, pretty damn clear, and also not touching that core progression at all. Which I have a lot of respect for, because I feel like in his position, he could easily just kind of bang his hammer down and go, no, we're doing this. And he's not, so a lot of respect for that. And yeah, I mean, he spoke about coffee and stuff. Obviously, we don't know if that will ever happen, but I mean, even if it were, like, what if you've got the official coffee of Old School? You know what I mean? Like, he spoke about it briefly, and I thought it was interesting to say the least. But
like, Jagex have always been very good at being clever with this sort of stuff. Like, I can imagine, let's say there is like a coffee sponsorship from somewhere. Let's say Starbucks decides, you know what, we really like Old School RuneScape, we want to do some sort of partnership with you. The J-Mods aren't going to put a Starbucks in Varrock.
No,
but they might put in something somewhere that's called like Moon Quid or something, and have some sort of like clever play on words with it, and you can like funny dialogue with one of the. Do you know what I mean? Like they'll do something totally interesting and funny rather than here is just a Starbucks now.
But what I liked when he said
the podcast,
NPC Contact. But what I liked when he said, though, is he was talking about how it's not necessarily just about adding things to the game. It's about providing an experience for the players outside of RS. So, for example, getting like a discount on coffee, right? He spoke about that and how, people who buy that coffee, they're going to see these little flyers that say Old School RuneScape and go, what's that? Let's play that. So
if you're maxed, you get 50% off your chai latte.
Oh, perfect. Mate, easy. Love a chai latte, man. Yeah,
I think this as a whole is quite interesting because, as you say, it's very, very difficult if you don't want to have like your own Squeal of Fortune, Solomon, whatever else. And I understand, and I definitely agree that you don't want it in the game, but there has to be a trade-off somewhere because you always want to have new players in the game reaching a larger audience than it obviously is at the moment. I think that would be daft to not want that.
Yeah. So
there has to be a compromise somewhere, and I think that the best way to go around that is to have these partnerships with, whether it be Amazon or whoever it may be, and have it so that if you link your account and you do whatever it is that you would need to do, you unlock certain in-game items. So like spell, like
Best in slot melee armor.
no,
Starbox.
Like variations on spell
Just like
animations
certain-
and stuff.
yeah, like spell animations, maybe like certain overrides for, so like you can dye like a certain item different color, or like your skin like we've currently got. I think that was quite good personally.
Yeah,
Just
because I
little
feel
things
like
like
end of
that.
the day, RuneScape and Jagex they need to make money. It's a business, right? I mean, you can cry and wah and type on Reddit as much as you want. They want money, right? It's just how it is. So
Yeah,
I
but-
feel like I would rather have them making money and doing well than the game kind of slowly dying off because they can't monetarily keep it
I
alive.
personally don't think the game would ever die off, but it's in a better position
Well,
now
no, I
than
know
it
what
has
you mean,
been
though.
for a long time.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, you want to keep new players coming into the game at a good rate, but you want to keep the core, like
Yeah, the core sort of
that-
mechanics of the game and the process.
the
same,
core
you know.
game, which keeps a huge chunk of the like the certain players playing. You want to keep that very solid, so that everyone will always come back to the game, and that's what makes
sure.
it so healthy. So I think in order to do that, you have to have these certain unlocks that don't affect XP rates or anything like that, obviously, and maybe to really sort of make it better for everyone, because obviously this. I mean, I would personally like to have all these certain things, and even though I've played for a long time, but I know that there's certain people that wouldn't, and I completely understand why, because it wouldn't be as authentic as 07, even though it's not
Yeah.
actually based on 07.
Well,
if you-
I think
if
I
you get
think
me.
the 07 argument is rubbish these days. I think people
I
who
think,
go
yeah, it's
like that's
changed
not
so much
it's
since
it's
it was
not
launched.
07. This is honestly old school RuneScape in its current form is more like 2012 RS than anything. But what kind of I'm gonna cut it there. I know I've said that multiple times now, but I don't want to go into this too much detail. I am now gonna pose the question of overall the theme of today's podcast. How do we think? And I thought it'd be something that we can all kind of talk about and enjoy talking about as well. I kind of wanted to focus on PVM, right? We all do PVM, or us three specifically. Badly, but we all do it. And we've kind of covered elements of this in previous podcasts, whether it be, talking about armor, blah, 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 power creep. But power creep is the one thing I really wanted to focus on today. And the question I pose to you two is, well, there's two questions, but they both link. Is one, if you could add any armor/weapons, what would they be? Where would it come from? What would they do? Now, I asked that because I will kind of briefly talk about power creep in a bit. But I kind of want to grasp what you guys think, the future of RS PVM or old school PVM is. For example, last time we had the Scythe, we have the Rapier with TOB. Where do we go from here? If you need some time to think, that's fine. But
Dane, do you want to go
Okay, well-
first, or do you want me to jump in?
Being a bit of a helmet, I would say a CLS and a Divine, please.
one thing I will say though before you make your answer is it doesn't need to be previously, but it can be brand new.
Yeah.
It can be completely fictional.
They're
I'll
just
just
my two
jump in
favourite items.
first.
They were
Um,
though.
So in episode 0, I posed you guys the question, what would you add to the game if you could add anything?
Yeah.
And my answer was Nex.
Mhm.
Nex for me is like peak RuneScape. Not just
I was
because
actually
of the boss.
watching videos last night of Nex,
False.
actually, weirdly enough.
False. Shut up. Not just because of the boss itself, but because there were items in the game that when I saw someone with those items, I was like, holy shit, that guy's got full Pernix. Like, what?
Yeah.
How is it physically possible to have made that much money in this game? So it was less about the armor itself, and it was more about the status.
What it represented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I said in episode 0 that I would want to add them in a way that they would be tier 80 armors. I wouldn't bother with the weapons because that wasn't really what Nex was about for me. I'd rather the weapons come from something like Raids 3 or whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
I also think that there's a bit of a discrepancy between the end game weapons that we have in at the moment. So we can maybe touch on that in a little bit. But yeah, I'd want to see tier 80 armors because I think as iconic as the God Wars dungeon armors are, come on, it's been
a while. It's been 7 years.
But by this point in 07's history, we're 8 years into the game now. So in 2007, 8 years is what 2000. Oh my god, my maths. 2015, 14,
15.
whatever.
One of those. Yeah.
So by that point, we've had stuff like summoning and dungeoneering, and Calfight King, I think, was before 2000.
Calfight King was 2013.
Yeah, so we've had like all of these new additions to the game, which is new gear, and I know that we now have Inquisitor, and Ancestral. Inquisitor is best in slot
Crush.
in niche cases, right? It's not the armor that you put on when you want to go do
It's not
Slayer or
Torva,
whatever.
basically.
Yeah.
Is what we're trying to say. It's good, and it's very good.
It's not
with,
like
you know,
all
like a scythe and
purpose.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I pose to you then, can I speak to Dane in just a second? But what I pose to you then, you talk about tier 80 armors. Would you then require? I said, don't know why I said Ren there. Then
Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren, Mr. Galaxy Wide.
The
widest boy.
lightsabers of the game, please.
Like Fortnite.
Your new skill is the Force.
Oh man, I'd be 99. So what I pose to you then is, of course, you're suggesting tier 80 armor. Can't be hard.
Yeah.
You done? We good?
True
Everything
skill
okay?
mastery being Darth Vader. Fuck off.
Yeah, at level 50, you get to choose which side of the Force you go on. Your
Only-
light side Force.
only if-
Anyway.
Sorry,
I pose to you the question. You're suggesting tier 80 armor, right? Which is
Yeah.
cool. But would it be something that was simply dropped, or would you then
Yeah.
require the old
No.
armor? Oh,
No.
you'd be separate.
I
You'd have
would
completely separate.
have a completely
Okay.
separate armor. I think.
So you don't
that-
think having the old ones would, benefit them? Even
No, because I think that there will always be a place for the God Wars dungeon armor. I don't.
So you'd make them degrade then?
No. So
No. Oh, okay.
okay. So here's my thinking. For items that require you to attach something to something else, it's because the previous item would then be completely defunct, right? There would be there's no use in having a master wand when the Kodai wand exists, right? Especially at the moment, because we have the Nightmare Staff now, and even without an Orbin, the Nightmare Staff is better than a Master Wand. So let's take the Master Wand. There's no point having a Master Wand if you have a Kodai Wand in the game, right? It's just a strictly better item altogether, and it would completely, the only reason that the Master Wand has kept its value is because you need it to attach the Kodai, okay? When I look at Nex armors, it's like I said earlier, when I was younger and I saw people with these armor sets, I was like, how the hell did you get enough money for that? And I was a relatively competent player back then. I wasn't...
Debatable.
Shut up. I wasn't awful. I wasn't the best. I was probably
You were all right.
average to above average, right?
Yeah.
So for me, Bandos, Armadil, and... what would the magic robe been at the time? I guess it would have been Arim. I don't think Subjugation was out.
Oh no,
then.
of course not. Yeah, Arims would have been your best.
Yeah, so for me, like, those were still very much useful items. They still maintained their value of about 40 mil a piece, because not everybody can afford to run around in Nex armor, because the content was so difficult back then. It would
I think
obviously
that's
be
the issue though,
different
is
now.
everyone's really rich now.
I don't think everyone is really rich. I
Or
think
is it just me?
I think that well, we are part of the high level community, right? Like
the high level community. Oh no, EVscape shut us down. Oh, it's like it's all the high level community.
not in terms of like HLC, but I mean like we are higher level players. We have a lot of time to play the game. Think about all of the thousands of players that play on mobile that that don't even like that. The idea of owning a Twisted Bow to them is like, how the hell do you earn a bill?
yeah, okay, I get that for sure.
And it's like, yes, stuff like bonds changes the way that the economy works.
No one buys T-Bows. I mean, unless you're like minted.
But yeah, unless you're me and have your father's credit card, and you want to like go and buy a T-Bow now. But yeah, so
yeah.
So for me, the idea of there's like so much money in the game, and there's also controversy at the moment about the Rev Caves and how there's like 76 billion GP coming into the game every day because of gold farmers, and it's like, yeah, but shut up. You know?
Yeah,
like
but
not everybody has this insane amount of money, and for the people that weren't around back in the day, a full set of Torva cost a bill. How many people do you see running around with full Inquisitor at the moment? There's like it's not a lot of players. It's like a very small minority of players that can afford this stuff, because when you get your first bill, you think, oh, I'll get T-Bow. Then when you get
Sure,
your second
okay.
bill, you think,
Scythe.
maybe get a scythe if I can stretch the money. When you get your third bill, you're not thinking of Inquisitor unless you are doing content like Nightmare, where it's best in slot or challenge mode
No,
raids or
I no,
whatever.
I can see it for sure.
But
Well, that's where it kind of stands then. If Inquisitor's going for a bill right now, how much is Torva go for?
yeah, I would say probably maybe like
It's gotta be
1.5 to 2
overmatched,
bill
right?
for a
For sure.
set. Like
So,
after like
just to
6 months of
clarify
the
then,
content or whatever.
your answer is tier 80 armor. No weapons, we're talking
Yeah.
gear here.
I
Okay.
think that the weapons are new enough to the game at this point where they still
And are we
have...
talking all three styles? Or just
Yeah,
one?
I would want Virtus.
From the same boss?
Yeah.
Okay, I see. Because I personally, although I really like the idea of Torva, I think you could stretch that out so much longer.
Well, that's sort of... I guess that's the only point that I'd be willing to sort of budge on. I've pitched this for a while. I love the Nex boss, but I think that Raids 3 should incorporate Nex in some sort of capacity and
We'll just have her in there.
Yeah,
That'd be
like
great.
have her be like the final boss or whatever. Maybe do it like Theatre of Blood style, where you have
Sure.
a bunch of like Zerosian generals before that, or like God Wars themed stuff.
I mean, it does
and then
theme.
have-
It does work if it is desert, right? You do kind of have Zaros
Yeah,
with, like,
exactly.
desert treasure too and stuff. So I mean, it does work.
And
I
have
guess.
that be... I do understand the concern about having all three of these best in slot things come from one piece
One
of
boss,
content.
yeah.
Obviously that's also a bit shitty for Iron Man as well, because they'll have to do the same
Oh, fuck
content
the
forever
Iron
and ever.
Man, I'm sorry
But yeah,
to say.
I agree. Like, fuck it. Like, the game should be balanced around you guys. Stop complaining. The other way that I could think about doing it is maybe have... So let's say Nex is the final boss, right?
Mhm.
And every week, similar to Araxor, the rotation changes. So let's
Oh, you
say...
mean like a different fight? Okay.
Yeah, so you have 3 versions of Nex. One of them is a melee fight, one of them is a mage fight, one of them is a range
Before
fight.
we kind of go over that, though, I want to clarify for those who have never played RS3. Araxor was a boss that, depending on the week, the fight would be different. So you could... There was 3 paths, and each path, had a different sort of mechanic. And every week, one of the paths closed.
Yeah,
So
and you could only
in order
get...
to fight was very different.
You could only get the loot from that one path that you could only get. So the way that Araxor works is that you need to get 3 leg pieces, sort of similar to Abyssal Sire. Then you combine those leg pieces, and you can either sell the stick that you make, or you can attach an eye, a fang, or a web to it to make
weapon,
a bow,
right?
a scythe,
It was a bow, a scythe,
yeah.
and a staff.
and a staff. So that one boss gave you, at the time, it was the 3 best in slot weapons for each class. Because I don't think... Wait, was Nox Staff better than Seismix on release?
Yes, it was.
I can't remember. I think the
It wa- it
abilities
was-
for
it was-
two-handed
it was
mage
different,
were
Depended
better.
on the ability, I think.
Having both was good.
Yeah.
I believe Sonic Wave is better than the other one.
Regardless,
But either way, we move.
you got 3 tier 90 weapons from this one boss. And the reason that it worked is because there wasn't so much of it coming into the game that it just completely devalued it, because you could only get the top piece of the leg from a rotation that
top
had
path, yeah.
P1 on it,
Mhm.
path 1. You can only get a middle piece from P2, and you can only get a bottom piece from P3. So you had to space it out, and there was an enrage mechanic as well, so you could only realistically do sort of 10 kills a day before it got too hard at the time, before it got like too hard for you to do anymore, because the boss would just like one hit you all the time. Obviously, mechanics on old school are different to RS3. You have tick eating and stuff, but I'm sure they would find a way to sort that out.
Yeah.
So I don't think it would be an issue necessarily to have best in across the combat triangle, or to have best in slot items drop from one boss, but I think that one boss would need to have something like a rotation system where, let's say, for 1 week you do you get the melee drops from it, so you have a chance of getting Torva plate, legs, or helmet,
or whatever it would be.
and then the next week it's the range rotation, and that's when you can get your Pernix and...
But through that, of course, the fight would be different.
Yeah, exactly. You would test different mechanics and stuff.
I mean, I suppose in the same sense, I would probably budge for that, but I think I'm still kind of in the camp where I would like 3 releases. But again, if that's how they did it, I wouldn't be upset, right?
I think that's just
That's just
because you like the idea of more content, right? Like,
For sure,
more
yeah.
content is good, and most of us like doing content for the rewards that we get out of the content.
Mhm.
And
So I will
if
kind of
there's
pan
no
it
point,
over.
yeah, go on.
Sorry to interrupt. I will kind of pan it over to Dane. So Will's answer has been, the tier 80 gear, right? What would you introduce if you could pick?
In terms of armor or a boss,
It could be anything. So the
So the
question
topic's
basically
power creep,
says
right?
any armor / weapons. What would they be? Where would it come from? And what would it do?
I personally think, although I would like something like Nex and having 3 separate weeks, 3 separate rotations, etc. Nex is an extremely good boss. I think the next boss that comes out, if it's not raids, because that's different, an actual boss on its own, I think it needs to have some form of enrage mechanic. And
Sure.
for that reason, I would say it
I'm out.
maybe
Sorry.
drops the 3 best in slot, like shields or something.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I feel like if
So
no
then
one-
replacing the spirit shields,
no, not well.
or being
I
able to-
just feel like no one ever thinks about using a shield because you just don't normally do that in old school.
Oh no,
And
I
if
get
you-
that.
If
It's
you
very
do,
much a DPS
you just only use an Ellie. That's virtually the only reason that you never wear a shield for it.
or an
If-
arcane, but it doesn't do much.
If you, but yeah, it's not an arcane. Is just nice to have. Like,
yeah, for sure.
no one's ever going to use an arcane for other than say, doing it like the Inferno with obviously
Speed
Mac
running,
Mage. So I just feel like shields get overlooked. I think it'd be a good opportunity to use them at the new boss as well because of the like the enrage factor that it would have.
So you think introducing a boss that's essentially going to get to the point where not having a shield is going to cripple you?
Exactly. And I would definitely
You're gonna
not have
need
it
that
solo.
defense.
Yeah, I wouldn't have it as a solo boss either. I'd have it as anywhere from say 2 to 4.
Okay, so I have
maybe
I have a
5.
question.
Go for it.
Sorry, just interrupt. Grant said earlier about would I have my like Nex sigil or whatever that I put on a piece of bandos to upgrade it. Would
Yeah.
you want to drop something that you put on maybe a spirit shield because otherwise the
Well,
spirit
there was
shield
talks
gets
about that with the
devalued?
corrupted
or...
one, right?
Yeah,
From
I'm just
Nightmare,
curious
but
because
we'll get into that in a minute.
you and I love the spirit shield, Stain. Your
Yeah.
favourite's obviously the arcane. I know I love the Ellie, and I think it would be a real shame to have a
Fuck the
situation
Spectral. Sorry.
have a situation like on RS3 where a divine is 8 mil. Right, so would you be interested in preserving the value of those shields, or would you just think, no, it's time for a new piece of content, they will drop in price, that's just the way things are?
I don't think the Ellie will ever drop in price, to be quite honest with you, just because of
The
how
spec.
rare it is. It's not easy to obtain. Like the actual boss fight itself, Corp is just not enjoyable. Let's face it.
Well, it's not a
and
lot. It's very simple, really.
It's just boring though. People don't do it because it's boring. And
no,
it takes
sure.
ages. And it's dead rare. And I also think when you've actually got an Ellie and you do use it, when it does actually get used, you can tell you've got an 800 mil shield. Whereas
No, I get that.
I don't think I would want to touch them. I think if they go down in price, they go down in price. They're not ever going to. No, they're not even that expensive now. When you think about how much they were originally when they first released in RS3, so I would just completely new slate, start again, keep the Ellie. If the Ellie drops, the Ellie drops. That's just the way it is.
So what do you pose these items are then? Are these best in slot shields for each combat style do they give offensive stats or purely defensive? You know what we're talking?
I would have them as purely defensive shields, and then, well, having said that, if you wanted to maybe try and keep Caught the way it was, you could have the Caught ones as like the best defensive shields,
okay,
and then have new ones as something that you need to soak up damage, but also have some
Get a
form
bit
of
of
output
offense out.
at the same time. Yeah.
Maybe
So
with like
essentially, I mean, I think the way of
recoil.
balancing that would be kind of assuming that the Ellie is still the best in slot for defense, right? You'd have that as a defense, but you obviously don't want to then take the melee shield and then make it better than a defender. So I feel like you make it give it more offense than that of say wearing an Ellie with range, but also not as good as that of wearing in a burning guild.
I think we're just talking about actual stats here. They could also have their own effect.
Yeah.
Where if they use with say a full set of X armor,
yeah,
like you get an extra 15% strength bonus or range bonus or whatever it may be. And I also feel like it would just completely change. Hopefully, because like if you're using range, more often than not,
you're using
like,
a T-bow,
using
right?
a T-bow.
Well, I do agree with you in the fact the landscape of the game currently is very much the best defense is a good offense, right? That's kind of where everything's at right now. Is if we can do damage, we'll last longer, and that's good.
Yeah.
So I do like that idea.
In terms of the actual boss itself that you would get them from, I
Rots.
genuinely, yeah, Rots, please.
Rots.
Rots was an amazing boss, but it would obviously not work in old
Yeah,
school.
so for those who don't know what ROTS is, ROTS stands for Rise of the Six. It was essentially Barrows on roids. You would fight all of the brothers at once. Well, there was two halves, but if you really want to look it up, you can. But it was a much difficult of a version of that of Barrows, and it awarded you shields. But I mean, no, I like the idea, to be honest. I think, as I said, like the game is currently going in a very DPS direction. I think the more weapons we add, I think it kind of devalues the sort of defense side of the game a little bit.
What about you, Grant? If you could add.
Well, I was gonna somewhat cheat and kind of copy you, but I had it in the sense that I was also a very big fan of 3 separate bosses dropping 3 separate sets.
Right.
So, for example, Nex. I mean, it wouldn't be Nex because I don't think they'll ever truly bring us Nex. It will be some sort of variant that's very similar. But I think
Nightmare.
Well, yeah. So I think it will be something like, like I think it very much reminds me of what they did in RS3 with the weapons. We got the Ascension creatures and Virago and then KK. Those were the 3 bosses that dropped the 3, and then obviously Araxor came in and had the 3 in one go. So I mean, I would probably go for the sort of tier 80 power armor route, but I think it would probably have to be stretched out. I mean, that's just my opinion. I think if you in stretching out over the course of 3 years, instead of 1 year, you just get one big boss and it drops everything. But in terms of the idea, I know in terms of the idea though of attaching it to something, I'm kind of impartial. I feel like if they added that, I wouldn't be upset. But at the same time, there's something quite cool about getting a Torva blade body drop.
Yeah.
The issue with that, I think, though, is it means you then Mage has the best in slot armor, and then you've got to wait 2 years to get one for range.
Yeah.
Well, I get that, but I don't think everyone ever thought about that though, because I think back in the day, you would use Armadillo and Bandos, but then you would use Arams. It just wasn't. It just how it was, and no one really complained about it.
Yeah, that's also because our mentality as a community has changed a lot since those days. Like nobody gave a crap about like what was best in slot. Like people used to mage with a DFS on because they thought it looked cool.
True.
Like,
and it still does, by the way.
Yeah. Just yeah, I don't know. What are your opinions on degrade to dust gear?
I'm not a fan of degrade to dust, but I'm a fan of degrading to repair.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that.
I think if you're willing to spend tons of money on gear and use it and actually smash things with it, then you should be prepared to recharge it, like the scythe. I don't see a problem with it. It costs a lot to use, but it's very good.
I agree. I'd be happy with Nex armors, if that's what we're going to call it. I'd be happy with them degrading in that sort of way.
Yeah, you just repair them with money.
Not to dust. I think that's it's a cheap way of
I never liked
maintaining
it when
a price on an item.
With Tectonic and Serenic and stuff. I didn't like it. I didn't like the idea of saving up all my money, my hard-earned money, to then buy something that I was inevitably going to lose.
Yeah.
There wasn't.
You just feel like you're on a time bomb, don't you? Like every time you use it, you just feel bad using it.
Yeah,
you're
like,
just wasting
I can't
money.
use my Malevolent today because it's Malevolent was tier 9 melee armor for those listening. But
it's like I would come up with an excuse to use worse gear in order to save the charges
I
I had.
and stuff to do Araxor because I was too scared to use my Malevolent sometimes when I was a proper noob. Still am, by the way, says Dane. But yeah,
okay.
Nice one.
All right.
So,
well,
yeah.
As for I know I didn't say about set effects earlier when I was talking. I know that when the Nex armor was released, it gave a hit points boost.
Yeah, I'm
not a fan of that.
That should be a thing now. It's too much. If it does so much damage anyway, why should it be so tanky?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't add that in, but I just thought I'd cover that before we move on because.
So the main reason I asked you that, so we could kind of have a grasp of where you think the game should go. The next question I pose is: do you think power creep is a problem that OSRS should be concerned about, and how would you propose solving it?
That is a question.
The answer is the fact that power creep is inevitable. We can't ever get around it. But how do you propose kind of slowing it down or introducing new things that might, So it's a bit of a big question, but yeah.
There's a couple of ways of looking at this. There's the route that RS3 took, in terms of making the breakpoints between different tiers a lot lower. So there was like a huge rework where like Rune became tier 70 from what I remember, or tier 80, I can't remember. And then we got to a point where it was like a tier 90, tier 92, and like you go up in these like little small
Just making
increments.
it really small, 92, 95, 97. Yeah.
So that's like one way of looking at it. So you rebalance all of the equipment, and then like in terms of like putting it in different tiers, because the T-bow is not a tier 70 range weapon, tier 75 range weapon. It's not. It's a tier 90 range weapon.
Sure.
Or you go the way that a game like World of Warcraft went, where as of this upcoming expansion, they're doing a huge crunch of all of the numbers. So let's say every 5 years or whatever, we just take all of the old gear that was best in slot and we just like gut it to the point where it makes space for new gear. I'm less of a fan of that because
I would probably say because then that's just like, what's the point, right?
well, I mean, you say that, but a lot of people out there will have enjoyed the 5 years of using their bow or whatever, and they'll by the 5 years after that they'll think, well, I'm bored of RuneScape now because I just go in and one shot everything with my new bow.
Yeah.
So there is an element of appeal there, I'm sure. I'm not someone that plays WoW, although I'm looking forward to jumping into the new expansion because it's all going to be fresh.
Yeah.
And we were talking a bit earlier about the idea of trying to attract new players to the game. And I know that Mod Mike D was saying that he was looking at expanding old school towards like Steam and like all of these like other gaming platforms like Epic Games and whatnot, just to get more exposure out there. And I think it would be a lot more attractive for a new player to come in and join in just as soon as everything in the game has sort of been quashed. Everything has been squished down, so it's like a level playing field. And because one thing that has prevented me from jumping into a game like WoW is that I know in order to be competitive at like the highest levels, I need to grind through what is essentially 20 years worth of content in order to get my best in slot gear to be relevant in the new content. Whereas I think that's kind of, obviously we have like a different system. Pretty much everything is tradable, and we have our economy based on that. But I don't know. I think it's an interesting way to look at it. I personally wouldn't, but I don't really like the idea of getting 120 attack for the sake of
I
adding
agree.
in a new
I don't think it should be extended,
tier.
Really.
Is a tricky question. What do you reckon, Dane?
Yeah, what do you think, Dane?
I think I can't remember which game it was. It was a long time ago now, but there was a game where it used to cap like the maximum level that you could get to, but it was like a fake level. So say we have just like 99s at the moment in old school. A new player could catch up because the people at the high end were only allowed to get to level 80, and then it'd be say gone to it'd be like 85 over say like 4 months, and then do it over the next 4 months it'd be capped to 90, etc. So people start the game weren't left, like you say, with 15 years of content to do, and then all the rest of it's also coming out at the same time. That's one way of looking at it. How that would work with old school now, I've got absolutely no idea, but it's an idea at the end of the day. I personally don't think power creep is going to ever be solved, just because of society now. Like we said, society just as a whole has changed, and people want to be the best all the time at what they do. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So you've just got to deal with it how you want to deal with it on a almost on like a personal basis, really. If you don't want to play like that, then you just don't play like that. That's just how you decide to play the game.
Well, I think, as I kind of said at the start, it's pretty inevitable that things are going to get more powerful. Bosses are going to get bigger, they're more powerful, all that kind of stuff. So it's like, and power creep in terms of old school and RuneScape in general is, per update, right? An update comes out, new stuff comes in. Cool. What's the next update? What else can we add? And I kind of had written down in my notes here. What do you think about the idea of like codexes and like learning new things rather than like specifically a weapon, right? For example, a twisted bow gives you X amount of max hits on a boss compared to say the ACB, but wearing an orbital crossbow with like an overload is going to be able to do not more damage than the twisted bow, but it's going to help out a lot.
Yeah.
So what's the
it's
kind of
definitely
idea of like that kind of stuff?
an interesting idea that of codexes. Obviously, we'd struggle a little bit because we don't have abilities to add codexes
Yeah.
in from, so
You can't,
like
like, yeah, for
we're a
sure.
bit hampered in that regard. But I do think that there is some sort of space for it, because if you think about let's say attack styles. Let's say that you kill a boss and it drops a codex which lets you use a different, like, learn a new way to attack with a weapon. So this is a terrible example, but let's say you get a drop and you can now train strength with a whip. Like you learn a new attack style to train strength with a whip. That doesn't change much
Too
for like
much, but
end
it would
game,
be something
but it's
people would buy.
yeah, it's definitely something that could be done, that I could see being done, and
I quite
still
like that idea. That's quite
Yeah, because
I
there's
like
this
that.
problem where it's like you want to go to bosses to make money. That's unless you're an Iron Man, but like you want to go to you want a PVM to make some money. But if things aren't worth very much, what's the point, right? So you want to go for next, you get a 12 plate that's like a bill, whatever, sweet. But it's like, so how much obviously with these? I mean, I wrote down sort of question marks because I wasn't sure if it was something that would work. But like I had the idea of the overload. Like similar to learning rigor and learning augury, you now learn how to make overloads, but they're untradeable.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean,
so it's
that'd
like,
be a
how much would
fantastic
that
drop.
be worth? Like, how much would that be worth? Right. Like, I don't know, like 200 mil for like a whatever it would be called.
200,
But you can
mil.
now make overloads with 95, 96 Herbler.
I think that is good in itself. Again, I'm all for overloads. I think overloads need to be in the game for us to go to the next level. But that if they cost money to actually unlock like the skill to do them, and you also need 96 Herbal or whatever it may be, that again just puts people that are at that level already, they will go so much higher than the people that are not anywhere near that level at the moment. And then obviously by the time, it's that just adds to the power creep, and I don't know how you even try and get around that unless it's literally just free to everyone straight away.
What I was kind of going to say with it is the fact that, so you would have, like, for example, I believe with like summoning, I'm not saying we should add summoning, but it's like, you got 96 summoning to then be able to use a yak, right? So it would be the same thing here with, like, say, an overload, but on top of that, because right now as someone with 99 Herbler, right, I can make divine pots, right, and I can make them for profit if I really want to. So what's the, no, I'm not saying you're saying it's a problem, but what's the issue with, say, adding like something like learning how to make an overloads for those high level players?
I think, unfortunately, it is an issue of a rather unwelcoming and toxic community, because I can imagine people that day of release will be excluding other people from certain content if they don't have. It's like the sort of people that, well, we went to Nightmare on release, right? Literally, as the update happened, we were stood there trying to get in. Within the first sort of like 10 minutes, we already saw people saying, like, if you have like only 5+ KC can join our team, blah blah. And it's like, are you fucking insane?
Yeah, okay.
So I can imagine overloads being another thing where it's like, for a player that's trying to get into PVM, if you add another 300 mil requirement, it's like, at some point it's just too much. And there's only so many Bandos Tacits drops you can get before you start going crazy over the place and want to like try some of the other content.
Well, there's the issue, is there's that balance between, we can go really far for the high level community, but we can go really far with that. But then there's also this kind of problem with, excluding people. But
what you could do with that, if you wanted to, because I do agree, it also would be like a money sink, which is always good for the game. Yeah. What you could say is you need to get 96 or whatever, or maybe even do it a bit lower. Maybe
like 90.
Yeah, so it was not quite out of reach for a huge chunk of the player base and even newer players. But you could also say that you also have to pace like an NPC. Every time you make one overload, you've got to pay them, say, 5k or something. So you could just make 30 overloads if you wanted to.
But then you could also you could get the drop, which allows you to learn the codex to. So let's say there's like the overload guru who you can take all the supplies to, give a bunch of money to, they'll make you overloads, or you can get the codex drop, which you can read
Oh, okay,
and
no,
learn the
so
art of
basically
making an
you can
overload.
either
You can then
take-
read it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so
yeah,
you can
that-
take the
that-
route where it's like you're spending
Yeah.
a lot of money in order to have what everyone else has,
So that you don't need
or
to, yeah.
you do the efficient method and you just get the drop or buy this scroll, whatever it would be.
That would
and
definitely
learn how to do it.
devalue the scroll. I think you're looking more at like maybe 50 mil for it then,
Mhm.
because at that point it's just more of a convenience than anything else. But I do
Yeah.
think that there is a real danger of literally just fucking excluding a ton of the player, and I think a lot of people out there will think that that's fine because players need goals towards the end game where they feel
Sure.
like, you know, like, oh, I've got my T-bow, now what's next on the list? But
Mhm.
a lot of people will think, oh, okay, I've got my T-bow, oh, more on the list.
Yeah,
And it's
no,
just
sure.
like,
Okay.
as someone like myself, I have a T-bow, I have all the armors and stuff. I don't have a scythe yet. It's something that I'm working on. But I know as soon as I get my scythe, I have to go and get a nightmare staff. I have to get all of the orbs. I have to go and get myself an Ellie. I have to get myself full Inquisitors. I feel like it's just adding more and more and more to the list of shit that I need to get, which is fine because it's best in slot gear at the end of the day. But something like an overload or whatever that would be so required well, at least maybe it wouldn't be, because the reason that overloads were viable on RS3 is because you had Beasts of Burden to take extra food with you,
Yeah.
because you took so much damage from using an overload, or a unicorn or something, so that you could like sustain through the damage. So maybe
So
it
kinda
wouldn't be
going
as
on
No,
that
OP.
it's
route
not. It
then.
wasn't so much that. It was more that you could use Sour Brews and then you'd always have your stats back up after a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
That would actually change the game completely.
Because you can't do that with divines, can you?
But obviously, at the moment,
No.
yeah, you can't do that.
The only way to maintain a divine is to drink another pot that isn't divine. So, for example, if you drink a divine ranging pot and you then use a brew, you can drink a regular ranging pot and your divine will still continue to tick down.
Yeah,
But that's the only way you can maintain that boost.
Anyway, carry on,
Which
bro.
means just
Sorry,
more
we
pots.
cut you
What I
off
was
there.
going to say, though, is kind of going on that note then, sort of what are your opinions on untradable things? Like, for example, a codex. Like, so obviously you're talking about, excluding players, but, how far do we go to the point where everything's just available to everybody?
I am very much a firm believer that if you are good at the game or you put enough time into the content in order to complete it, that you should be rewarded for that. I see this a lot with people talking about the Inferno and stuff, which is obviously the prime example. I am in no way do I consider myself a top tier PVMer. Maybe 15 years ago I was I was up there, but not anymore. So when I set myself the goal earlier this year of getting my cape, and I sat there for like a month grinding it out, going through all of the fucking punishment that place throws at you, I had a real sense of pride when I finished. And I think that a lot of people are just very content to pay 300 mil to someone that sells capes and get it done. And I don't think that that's right in any
I agree with
way,
that.
shape, or form. Shut up. So I'm very much a firm believer in, even if it's like a marginal upgrade, like the difference between an Infernal Cape and a Max Cape and a Fire Cape is one max hit, right?
Yeah.
Which is like not really a lot when you think about it.
No,
So
it's not really.
there's not really, like, it's a bit stupid to really put like a month of time into getting it or whatever, but for the people where it does matter, then it's hugely important that the integrity of that sort of thing is protected.
Maintained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem at all with excluding players that aren't good enough to do that content, because it gives you a reason to push yourself. I don't think that every piece of the game should be accessible to someone that, works a 9 to 5, maybe plays an hour a night. Because
yeah, of course, because it's just no one would ever get anywhere.
Yeah, if you set the bar that low, yeah, exactly. If you set the bar that low, so let's say Theatre of Blood, you could complete it from doing it like, a couple of hours a night for 2 nights, and you're proficient at Theatre of Blood.
Yeah.
After having never seen the content before, like where's the hype? When they make new content, nobody's going to be like, oh my god, who's going to get to solo the Theatre of Blood first? Oh, that's so cool. Whoops did it. There's going to be none of that, because it's not going to be difficult. So obviously there needs to be content in the game that is difficult and excludes players from doing it. I think that sorry, I'll just wrap this up.
No, it's
I
just
think
'cause
that
what I was gonna say was the fact that I agree with you in a sense, but I am just a massive fan, especially with RS3. I was a massive fan of just things that you can't buy, right? I mean, we're talking about
Yeah.
codexes and
Yeah.
stuff, but
No,
at
I agree.
least buying the codex, you still need 96 herb lore, right? I'm a massive fan of earning things
Yeah.
rather than just going, oh, I went to the arena, I can now buy this. So it's like there's the kind of fine line between allowing people to be in the content, but also not allowing everybody, because that kind of then sets the bar too low. As
I
we
think there's
spoke
a big difference between excluding people based on whether or not that they have completed certain content and
Mm.
having content that excludes certain people from doing it if they're not good enough. I think that if on release at Nightmare, that guy outside of it was like, right, in order to join in this Nightmare kill, you need to have overloads unlocked, you need to have a scythe, you need to have full inquis. Like, if the list starts like stacking up, and obviously he's well within his right to do that if he wants to make a team of like, professionals, then like fair enough. But I just see that happening more often because there's just more like paywalls to get through before you can get to PVMing.
For
And
sure.
PVMing is supposed to be, like a fun way to make money, so it's kind of hard to make money without having any of the gear that you. It's sort of like a vicious circle, really. I don't know. I'll just wrap up rambling a bit. I'm happy with stuff being unlockable rather than you just buy everything, because I think just buying everything is stupid. Like,
What are your thoughts, Dane?
I personally think we need to have a few bosses that you can do in a small team, like 2 to 3, that you can't solo.
Right. Okay.
And because it means that people of our level can go and do that, whatever. You don't need to worry about them. And it also means that the people that are newer and are getting into PVM can learn it with their friends at the same time as well.
Yeah.
So you're not limiting it for either set of either set of players, and also, but that's in terms of like what I would add into like with certain bosses or like a new boss or whatever. I personally think we need to now focus as a set of people that mainly do PVM. There needs to be more stuff that is used for PVM that you don't get from maybe doing it. So like overloads, for example, is obviously a really good one. Maybe like a new set of prayers from like a new quest. And don't just say soul split, obviously, if you know what you're both going to say.
Yeah.
I
get what you mean. So like,
there needs to be more variety to be able to be used at new bosses. Otherwise, it's just going to be using the same gear, using sour brews and I said rocktails then.
Rocktails.
I know.
I say
they
that all
are
the time. It's
rocktails.
angler,
It's
but I
fine.
always say,
Anglerfish, obviously, which they are basically rocktails. I think there needs to be. It isn't just about what armor you've got and what weapon you've got. Basically, it needs to be more like If you think you're a really good PVMer right at the top, then you have to be able to do every skill to, every skill to get overload and all the new prayers and all the new quests.
I just want to tag on that I think that there should be stuff like Dana's saying, but it should be locked behind KCs rather than money. Because I look at something like, if I log into RS3 now, I look at my prayer book, I have to spend like 4 bill to buy prayers.
Oh yeah.
I have to spend
what you're trying to get at
3 bill to to go and get my abilities. I have to then buy 10 bill worth of gear, and it's just like, okay,
fuck off, basically.
I think it would be cool if, obviously you can't do it now, but let's say when you've done 200 Chambers of Xeric, you unlock Rigor. So that you actually have motivation to do the content.
Obviously not that specific thing, but I get what you mean. So after like a certain amount of time of doing the content, you're guaranteed, similar to the Vorkath head, right? You're guaranteed.
So it's less about I want to stack up a bunch of money and then buy it, and more about I have done the content and earned this piece of, equipment.
Well, that could be anything from
KCs
or from what Dane said. It could be, quests or like it would just be like a quest, the Porcine of whatever you get. Here's Soul Split. It's like it would be this super massive Grandmaster quest that requires 90 in stats to get, blah blah blah. You know, I mean, I think overall, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah,
I'd also do the
Again,
same with pets, by the way. If listing JGX, which you're probably not.
JGX, love that.
Don't just have it so that someone can just snipe one at 1KC and then never do the boss again, 'cause that's just pathetic.
I mean,
it's
that's a
happened now.
whole other can of worms, but I mean, I think overall, boys, we've taken a big chunk out of this, and I'm really happy with how this has gone. But I would love to know what everyone else, thinks. So if you are listening, drop a comment. What do you think? What would you add?
Yeah.
Because and tell us why. Because I think we're all quite interested. But yeah, overall, I'm happy. What about you
happy?
guys?
All right, well, we're an hour and 10 minutes in.
I think that's pretty respectable.
Do you wanna? Should we wrap it up, or do you wanna talk about anything else?
I'm reckon we wrap it up, to be honest, because I think there's a lot of stuff that we could take on to another podcast. I think we
Yeah.
don't want to.
I'm
I
sure
think
we
we
can
would
lead
do.
on to another podcast from that conversation.
Yeah, we
For
have
sure,
a
but-
lot of interesting ideas around PVM because obviously it's what we do.
Well, that's
most
all we
of the
do,
time.
right?
And
But guys,
they aren't
appreciate it.
necessarily great ideas, but they are. It sparks conversation, right? That's the whole point of this. We're not trying to
Well, that's
fix
why I
the
picked
game.
this. That's why I picked this specific topic, because I
Yeah.
knew we could talk for 6 hours about it.
And there is no correct
So-
answer to how
No,
to
of course
fix
not.
power creep.
Totally.
It's something that different games do in different ways. They all have pros and cons, but
But yeah,
Okay.
but you two, thank you very much for having the chat. Everyone
yeah.
listening, cheers for watching as per usual. Leave a comment. What would you do? Because we would love to know. But yeah, so that'll be me. I think. What about you guys? You good?
no, nothing from me. Thanks for
Any
watching,
sign
guys.
outs? Follow me on Twitch, PogChamp.
If you've made it this
Yeah.
far, you've got my respect. I don't know how I've made it
Oh,
this far.
you've got to earn that. You've really got to earn.
Thank you
the
very much.
respect. Big. Cheers, guys. See you later.